Hello? Yes. How you doing? Yeah, is the quality of the sound okay? Good, good. Yep, please do. Yes. I think the bottom line on this is that China's new normal is a very broad concept. Um, Typically, the Western media trivializes it to being about whether or not the growth for 2015 will be 7% or not. But the new normal is a very comprehensive transition in the Chinese economy towards being a managed market economy. And that calls for a very different type of support and cooperation from the outside world. In the early stages, China needed machines, technology, know-how, and markets. In the second stage, it needs much more sophisticated support and help. And for example, with China's plan to internationalize the renminbi, it needs the support and cooperation of other global financial centers to enable that to happen smoothly. So in many areas, such as professional services, supporting the rule of law, financial services, supporting the renminbi, open economies, allowing China going global to come into their markets, the Silk Road concept, which at the other end of it is Europe, and having the support of the United Kingdom and the interest of the United Kingdom in the Silk Roads is important, and the cooperation of the United Kingdom in the construction of the Silk Roads is also very helpful. So it is the transformation of the Chinese economy into the new normal towards a managed market economy that works well with the British economy. And for that reason, your ambassador, Liu Xiaoming, has used this phrase, a golden era. And it is potentially a very good era. There are risks and problems and challenges out ahead which might interrupt it. And it's only 2 or 3 years since we had the problems of the Dalai Lama. So there are still challenges to overcome. But the objective economic situation is what they call win-win. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, George Osborne's second visit to China has been very successful, as the first one was. And he is full of ideas, and the Chinese side has been planning for many years how it can understand the needs of the British and provide lots of opportunities that are good for China and good for the UK. And they have found many areas of cooperation, like high-speed train, nuclear plants, refurbishment of different parts of London and the north. So there's a lot of good things happening. You ask about the two things. Urumqi. I've been trying to suggest to the British government for over 20 years now to visit Urumqi and to visit Kunming. as these are two important border areas which will lead to major opportunities, and now specifically with Urumqi in One Belt, One Road. There is no doubt that the Chinese idea of Silk Road, which is based on the concept of common prosperity, shared prosperity, is a good project. It's good for the world. It involves very large investments, $8 to $10 trillion, and maybe ultimately up to 1 billion people being urbanized in Central and Western Asia through to Eastern Europe. So the One Belt, One Road initiative is a great opportunity for Asia and a great opportunity for the British to participate in. How to do that is yet to be worked out. But as it's already going, it's just an idea of something that may happen in the future. The One Belt, One Road initiative is already well underway. So the British have to play a little bit of catch-up to take full advantage of it. But I think they will, because the Chancellor is very committed. With regard to the Northern Powerhouse development, China also has its Northern Powerhouse, Beijing, Tianjin, Hebei. And I think it will be particularly useful if these two northern regions develop a special bilateral relationship and invest and support each other. The Chinese Northern Powerhouse will be much more comprehensive than the British one. The British one suffers from different political parties and very local regional differences. The Chinese Northern Powerhouse will, while having some of those problems, get over them much faster and develop the whole area into a much bigger business, commercial, cultural, and sporting area. So I think that because the Chinese are also involved in a Northern Powerhouse, the opportunity for Chinese to feel comfortable with understanding what the British are doing is much better. And so I think, again, there will be good areas for cooperation in this as well. Yeah, so the British need to be encouraged and led into new areas. The Chinese go into new areas without any worries. They've gone into Africa, South America, all over Asia, Russia, Siberia. It's not difficult to find amongst 1.4 billion Chinese those who want to go into new areas and try and make some money and some progress. Amongst the British, we're a smaller population, but we have a history of going into new areas. And we will just have to hope that the British are able to organize themselves in a way that enables them to do it. I think they can, because I think the Chancellor is so committed. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I didn't quite understand the first point. That what type of messages? I see. I see. I think the amount of deals, I never take a lot of notice of that because it becomes a challenge for those organizing those deals to make sure the number looks good. But in general, the scale of those deals will reflect the enormously positive and active relationship between the United Kingdom and China. So I think that the numbers will look good, and they are good. But I think what's more important is the fact that the president is coming here on a single trip, very rare. They usually go and visit 3 or 4 countries. He's just coming to the United Kingdom. And that shows that following the visit to the United States, he's got a great interest in the development of the relationship with the United Kingdom. I think the bigger problem is that British companies don't yet understand what going global means. And this is an opportunity for them to hear lots of messages from China, which they have heard before, but have not absorbed. I always say to the British, don't ever say to me that you didn't know the Chinese were going to do this. They told you, but you didn't hear it. And that's partly because the way the Chinese speak and translate, the content is never quite so clear because it sounds like generalizations. But actually, if you take the time to read and understand what China is saying, then you can see exactly what they're going to do. So I was talking about the Silk Road 3 years ago, and people asked me, was I crazy? And I said, no, this is the Chinese telling you what they're going to do. If I was you, I'd get on a plane tomorrow to Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, and get an idea of what the Chinese are going to do. What will it mean working in those countries with China? So the British will have an opportunity to hear time and time again what the Chinese are saying. And that's good because eventually they will understand it. In your next question, you asked me about the difference between going to America and coming to the UK. Should I go on to that? Or do you want me to go on to that, or do you want to ask the question? No. Okay. I think the relationship, the main internal contradiction for China is the transferring the economy from a low-cost export economy into being a managed market economy. And there are large vested interests which want to keep things the way they were because they're comfortable doing that and they want to carry on doing it. Change is never very easy for anyone. The main external contradiction that China has is in its relationship with the United States. The United States is a big, powerful country which dominates the world, and China is pushing at the edges of the American power. And so the relationship between China and America is one we know well from history, a rising power and an existing power. And what is different this time is that China has read the books, watched the films, and knows that trying to challenge the American system will cause problems. Whereas the Chinese have decided to develop their own system in Asia. Now, there are tensions between America and China about the American access to the Asian system, and there are tensions between China and America about Chinese access to the Western system. But providing these two systems develop well and produce growth, and they cooperate with each other, they will work out okay. But for now, the situation is one where both sides are not sure of each other, don't quite trust each other, and are testing each other. The relationship with the United Kingdom is different. The United Kingdom is not challenged by the rise of China in the same way, nor does it fear China. For the British, the major question was, would the rise of China bring benefits to the United Kingdom? And the Chinese came from the start with offers of investment and support for critical industries. So the British are immediately welcoming the Chinese, and there are concerns because of the contradiction between China and the United States. But in general, the British interest lies in developing its relationship with a rising power. And if one looks at the history of the world, there is only one empire, I think, that has gone from being an empire peacefully, and that is the British Empire. And it handed over to the American Empire in the 1930s without a shot being fired. And that was because of the wisdom of the British of recognizing that change was going to happen and they could benefit from association with the United States. Now China is rising and the British are showing the same ability to understand and benefit from the rise of China. So the relationship between China and Britain and China and the United States is very different. But will America try and influence the United Kingdom to do more of what it wants in its relationship with China, for sure. It will try, but I think that the British are more aware of the dangers of blindly following America because of the experience in Iraq and other places. The British are a little bit more careful, but at the same time, China should never take for granted that the British would leave and abandon the Americans. The relationships between the two countries are very deep and very interwoven. So your question is very good. There is a difference between the British and American responses to China, and there is an important relationship between Britain and America, and we need to be careful over the next 5 to 10 years how America and China get on, because it will affect the British relationship with China. Could affect it. Yeah. Well, for some newspaper writers and journalists, it does, because what sells newspapers is gloomy news, bad news. But the change, China could not go on as it was. If China had carried on at 10% growth, it would have collapsed. And if China doesn't change its model, then it would be in a lot of trouble. So it's a good thing that China's changing its model. And you can't change without a lot of problems developing. So, if you get things like the stock market going up and down or the currency moving, this is really quite normal in world events. But the newspapers try and make much bigger stories out of it. I think the Chinese stock market is under good control from the Chinese side. I think they allowed the speculators in and then cut them off. And I think the Chinese stock markets will be much more stable now because China allowed them in and then showed them this was not a way to make a profit. With regard to the currency, I think China made its point to the United States. If you want a free renminbi exchange rate, then you have to think twice about whether or not you raise interest rates in America. You must look at the consequences of what you want. So I think that the changes in the Chinese economy, if anybody is a sensible thinking person, will realize that it's inevitable. They'll have their ups and downs. Yeah. Okay, but let's see. Every time the Chinese economy has become fashionable, certain types of people have tried to rush to make money in China. And what they find is that there are specific areas where there are opportunities, and these are usually managed by quite big companies with quite good ideas. And there is a period of fallout when some of these other people begin to realize that it's not as simple to make money in China as they wished it to be. And you get some bad stories. But, these stories pass on. It's not long. It's only, 18 months since we had the GSK story and everybody said, oh, it's too dangerous to do business in China. There's a big anti-corruption movement. And you must be very careful because anything you do might get you in trouble. It's only a few years since RTZ had a big problem with Chinalco. And everybody said, you see, you can't do a business deal with a Chinese company. But actually, these problems come and go. And you ask yourself the question, what is the general direction? Well, look at the attention being given to this president's visit, much, much bigger than anything in the past. So the general trend is good. Yes, there are some problems. Yes, there are some bad stories. But they are very much a small minority of what's going on. I'm not worried. I'm not worried. We've been working at this for 65 years. We used to do all the cultural exchange, all the sports exchange, all the people-to-people exchange, and most of the business exchange. We're happy that others are beginning to take up the weight and the responsibility of doing many of these things, and we're having a little bit of a lighter time while we concentrate. Our concentration has been on the Silk Roads. We've been doing a lot of work in understanding what this is about and what are the ways in which British companies and Western companies can cooperate with China. We have quite a good understanding of what is going on, but we have to do a lot more research. So, for example, the week after the presidency, I'll be in Madrid with your Development Research Commission, DRC, meeting with many countries from all over the world about the Silk Road project. And that will be probably the best opportunity to understand more about the Silk Road. So it's good that there's culture to culture and people to people and sport to sport. But I think the big thing for the future is the future of the new continent of Eurasia. That's where the 48 group, Eurasia. EURASIA. That's the new big project. The linking of London, Berlin, Istanbul, Tehran, Karachi, Urumqi, Beijing, Mongolia, Ulaanbaatar, Moscow, Berlin. All of these linkings that are going to be made down to South Africa, down to Africa, through the Middle East. This is the transformatory event, not of this century, but of the last 500 years. We're moving from being a world of oceans to being a world of the land of Eurasia. It's going to be quite an incredible change. I don't think I'll be alive to see it. But what we're looking at now is the creation of the 22nd century. In 1991, 1992, the vice governor of Yunnan, trying to convince me to put a joint venture into Yunnan, told me that they were going to open land and river routes through the Mekong and so on, through Vietnam, through Laos, through Cambodia, into Thailand, into Burma. And he said, we will have a big impact in the Mekong Delta in Southeast Asia. Now, I told everybody that there were big things happening. Not many people listened to me. But that was the beginning of the Silk Roads. Now we're hearing about the Silk Roads. Later, we will hear about Eurasia. That's where I think China's main thinking is how to build a single land continent between Europe and Asia. And it'll happen. But it may take 50 years. Yeah. we took the first British football team to China in 1978, and in the middle of the second half there was a great roar, and the reason for the great roar was Deng Xiaoping made his first public appearance at our football match, which broke in on China because Taiwan was the member in FIFA and not China. After that, China became a member of the football world. And we were the ones that led that, and we did many tours to China afterwards. I'm glad that finally the British English football authorities and the Chinese football authorities are getting to know each other and working out ways to develop Chinese football. There's a saying that in China everything has improved in the last 35 years except one thing, and that is Chinese football. So if Xi Jinping can bring some progress to Chinese football, many, many Chinese will be delighted. I don't think the Chinese are looking to Britain. I think the Chinese are looking around the world to understand the world of football. They're trying to understand the Asian continent of football, and they're trying to understand about Chinese people and their ability to play football. And as part of that, they will transform China's ability to operate as a leading nation in football. It will take 20, 40 years. It's not a quick process. But Xi Jinping is very wise. It needs to start now. They've wasted 30 years. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Nice talking to you. Okay. Lovely. Thanks a lot. Bye. Bye.